I am going to ask for some input during this. So if you're snoozing, stay off camera like you are. I see some like Catherine. Catherine's probably sleeping. I don't know what she's doing. I'm going to call you out, Catherine. If you're not, if you would mind, come off camera or turn your camera on, and let's make this a good session with each other. We're going to talk about podcasting, and I'm like Barbara. I'm sharing this from my personal experience about podcasting. I've actually did a podcast before I did this one that we created for WDTM Radio. For those who don't know, we've had a podcast now for about a month, WDTMradio.com, and it was just to introduce people to the conference, right? And so I'm using this as my project. I hope Barbara did too. I had my mentor told me, if you give a speech, if you do something, get credit for it in Toastmasters. So I'm getting credit for giving this speech today. It's a little more than what the project calls for, as Barbara pointed out to you there, but that's okay. Podcasting. I'm going to tell you about podcasting today. And how many of you, if I said, hey, let's have breakfast together, you would know about what time we're going to eat. Are you with me? Yeah, you got the idea. We eat breakfast in the morning, sometime when you get up. But if I said, would you make me the best breakfast that you can make? Now, some of you are going to make pancakes. Some of you are going to be like, or make what I really love, which is bacon, eggs, and biscuits. Some of you make French toast. Some of you say, get you a bowl of cereal and shut up and sit down. That's okay too, right? It's all what we call breakfast. And so if I said, let's make bacon and eggs and biscuits, you may start the biscuits first. You're going to do it the way that you know how to do it and the way that you've come to find out to do it. The way I make breakfast is the way I found out to do it from my grandmother. My grandmother, I watched her cook, and by watching her cook, I know how to sort of cook myself. So what I'm going to share with you today is how to make breakfast, and putting that in quotes today, okay? The way that I know how to do it. I'm going to tell you right now, this is not the gospel. This is not the only way to do it. There are many ways to do what we're getting ready to talk about. It's making a podcast. And I'm just going to share with you the way I found to do it. This is not the cheapest. This is not the most expensive. It's not the most efficient, maybe. I found out it's not the quickest, it's not the slowest. It's just the way that I've learned to do it. And if, as we go along, if you've found some ways that you've done this before as well, I would love to hear them, because I'm still learning. I really am. I feel sort of shaky in my experience on giving a podcast, although we've got some up. So I'm going to share my screen as well on creating podcast. And what I do too, I was editing it just a minute ago and I didn't get it up correctly. So let me do that. And then let me share. Okay. There we go. All right. Y'all can see that, right? All right. So creating a podcast. Here we go. Let me give you the technical term, then we'll dive right into it. A podcast is an audio or a video file. I am mainly going to talk today about audio files, but it can be video files, and we still call it the same. I don't know why it's called a podcast if it's both audio and video. I don't know. Anyway, it's a relatively low-cost method of producing and publishing your message. Okay. It's just a way to get it out there. I don't work for a broadcasting company. I don't have to work for, Ted Turner or any Disney, anything like that. I can do it myself. You can do it. And I hope that you try to do a podcast yourself. We all, just like writing the book, I've told you about writing this book. I put this book together. It didn't cost me a dime to put the book together. I'll show you some ways that it won't cost you a lot to make a podcast, but that's what a podcast is. Barbara mentioned this in her speech there. This is a level 4 elective. For every pathway, all 11 pathways, a podcast is one of the electives. And the requirement is that you record a minimum of 60 minutes of content. Now, like Barbara said, you can break that into 5. How's that work out? Anyway, as many as you want to, right? And they have to be divided as you choose. but each one must be a minimum at least 10 minutes, but it can be longer. Okay. So there's ways to get around it. And here's the key. I don't think that Toastmasters actually requires you to publish it. I don't think you have to publish it. I just think you have to create it. You may disagree or agree with that point right there, first of all. All right, hearing none, I will move on. So the first question I asked, I asked actually Nicole Greer about something, and she answered this question, very first question. Says, why do you want to do this? So why do you want a podcast? What makes you want to do a podcast? Well, Toastmasters tells me I have to. Well, okay, that's okay. That's your results, right? To produce it, because Toastmasters is one of the electives that you have. But why do you want to do it? So the question that you want to start to think about is, first of all, what's your topic? If you want to talk about fishing, okay, I'll have a fishing podcast. Or if you want to make a podcast about making breakfast, let me know when you do, because I want to listen to that one, first of all. Okay. You want to talk about, Barbara, what Barbara just did is she could took what you spoke, what, Barbara, maybe 45, 60 minutes, right? 60 minutes. She could have took that and broke that into several little podcasts and created a wonderful podcast just to share with people how to navigate and work into pathways. That's an option, right? So what's your topic? Very first thing, you got to have a topic, and you got to have a passion. I'll tell you right now, having a passion for it will drive you through it. What's your topic? Next, who is your audience? Who's going to listen to this? Is your kids going to listen to it? You're going to make your spouse listen to it? Tell my wife, honey, would you just at least download this so I can get one more download? Somebody help me here, right? Who is your audience? Because you're going to tailor your message to your audience, right? If I'm talking to, if I think in my mind, and here's another key. If I think, I'm going to use Barbara's example here as we go through this. If I'm thinking, I'm going to take Barbara's message and I'm going to share that in a podcast, her first thought as far as audience is, and she even mentioned this, she was glad that we had experienced Toastmasters listening. So maybe she's going to share that podcast with the intent that experienced Toastmasters are going to listen. That'd be great. And when experienced Toastmasters tune in, they're going to get a lot from it. However, new Toastmasters that dial in, they're going to get something from it too. That's not the intent of the podcast, right? The intent is for experienced Toastmasters to listen to how to navigate pathways, but younger or not younger, but less experienced Toastmasters will get benefit from it as well. What about your neighbor? You share it with your neighbor. Hey, Bob, guess what? I just started a podcast. What's it about? Oh, it's about Toastmasters pathways. I don't know what that is. Well, listen to it and see what you think about it. Bob knows nothing about Toastmasters yet. Because he listened to my podcast, he's now interested in Toastmasters. He was not my intended audience, but he will get a benefit from it. All right, you start to see how that comes together there. Next is your message. How are you going to present this? Are you going to present it in the way that, we're going to stick with audio, right? We're not doing video. We're going to stick with audio. How are you going to get that message? How are you going to arrange your message so that it is properly received? Think about your message. Really, it sticks back to your topic, but how do you get your topic into a message? And then consistency. For the WDTM radio podcast, we decided we were going to release one a week we did it for a little over a month leading up to the conference. Why that consistency? Well, we figured that if we released it and was able to promote it, then it would get to enough people within a week, and then the next week we'll be ready for more. And here's another thing, who had to produce it. So who had to have a little time. It takes some time to produce a podcast. So I cannot just crank out a podcast every day. I just couldn't do it. It just wasn't possible. So you got to think of your consistencies. Once a week, twice a week, once a month, think about your consistency that you can support. Okay. Any questions, thoughts, comments on this part of it? All right. You're not being interactive with me.
Hey, John.
Yes. Hey, Dave.
If you want some interaction, podcast is an acronym. I put that in the chat. It stands for Personal On-Demand Broadcast.
Personal. Oh, that's cool.
Which is why it doesn't matter whether it's audio or visual.
Good point. Thank you, David. That's cool.
You know, John, I was also just sitting here thinking, and by the way, David, thank you. I never knew that either, but this is almost universal advice here, because I'm thinking even with any type of speech, any type of communication method, these 4 things are critical anyway. So I think that this does have a more universal message even than for podcasting. So I'm thinking anything, whether it's a social media channel or a blog series or anything along those lines, this is really important advice. So I thought that was very relevant. So thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. So now let's get into the content. What are you going to call your podcast? You can call it, we'll call it Barbara's Pathways Navigation. See what I did there? Pathways Navigation. Anyway, you come up with a name. You got to have a name for it. It's got to be unique. If I come up next week and I called it John's Pathway Navigation or Candace's, it needs to be sort of unique, but there's no limit to why we can all come up with a podcast called Pathways for All. Hey, I've got a podcast named Pathways for All. David's got a podcast called Pathways for All. It doesn't matter. We're not stepping on each other by that, but we're not making ourselves unique either, right? Then artwork. We come up with a WDTM artwork, and I'll tell you, for those who haven't seen it, I know you've seen it quite often. I'll put it up here though. That little logo right there, I thought to myself, I can do this. I'm going to create this. But guess what? I'm creative, but I'm not creative that way. So what I did with that was I went to a website called Fiverr, Fiverr. And at Fiverr, I paid someone, not very much, to create this logo for us. The guy who did it, he created 4 or 5 different options. I had some other people weigh in and give some advice on it. And then we picked the one. This was not the only one he came up with, but it's the one that we used. So you need a little bit of artwork to distinguish your work. Then bumper music. Oh, this is where the fun came in for me. I love music. When we started talking about a theme, I started with a theme when we first started, and we said, let's do a 70s theme. And somehow somebody mentioned, hey, what if it was like a radio station, a 70s radio station? I said, you like WKRP? That's how it all come together. So we took that theme and we come up with a WDTM radio, which is sort of like WKRP, but it's not, right? We didn't actually steal any intellectual properties, if anybody's a lawyer on the call. But here again, I play music. I've got a guitar right here beside of me, if you can tell that or not, but I am not a good guitarist and I'm not a really good singer. So I went to Fiverr again and I told Fiverr, I rewrote the words to the song. I come up with the new words, and if you want to get the lyrics, they're on WDTMradio.com on the downloads page. I took the lyrics and I found about 3 different artists that would get close to what I wanted to sound like, because I really want it to sound like what WKRP in Cincinnati sounds like, but I didn't want to just completely just overwrite their stuff. So I got to a guy, he recorded it, him and his wife did the vocals on it, sent it back to me in an MP3. Bam, I've got bumper music. All right, I need that. That I paid to get there again. I paid for that. I paid money to have that done. That's something you don't have to do. If you just want to get your guitar out, or if you want to hum, make that, or you can actually get bumper music for free off the internet too. So there's different ways of getting your bumper music, but you want just a little something to come in to introduce you before you start your actual podcast content. Okay. The end of the content, are you going to do it solo or as a team? Now, let me look around here real quick. Who's on this call? Is Curtis in here? Curtis, are you in here? No, it's not. Good. Curtis and I are like brothers in a way, but he looks at things a little differently than I do. I'm moving at this direction, and Curtis sometimes moves at this direction. we don't always jive on the direction that we want to go, but we pretty much do. So if you're doing this as a team, then you want to be sure that you're doing it with somebody that you get along with and you think alike, sort of, right? Or the other option is to do it solo. I'm going to do it all by myself. Stephen Shainer's podcast, he does it solo, and he interviews people. He's more of an interview type podcast, which leads into guests. Do you want to do all the content of yourself? Barbara's doing it. She's going to talk only about pathways. That's perfectly fine. Maybe sometimes you like to invite a guest. You can invite a guest to be part of you. Let's let them know what you're doing and why. And then what direction do you want the podcast to go? Do you want it to continually cover information? Do you want it to lead to a climax? Do you want lead to resolution? What's your direction that you want for the podcast? And then lastly is your message. What do you have to talk about? Let's put it together into some kind of script. And that's where we're at next. The script. Any comments before we go to that? Any questions?
I have one, John.
Yes.
I'm not a lawyer, but I am a paralegal that worked in copyright infringement for 4 years. And I'm concerned about like the music. Like, are there ways to make sure that when you're taking the music that you're not, because I think a lot of people don't see issues with just grabbing a song and, thinking, oh, you could just, those of us that grew up recording songs off the radio on a cassette tape thinking there was no issue with that. And now I felt like I had to go back and pay all those artists millions of dollars when I went through my first trial. But it was like, you don't realize that. So is there a way to ensure that there isn't even like an innocent infringement when looking into that? And that may be going a little bit deeper than most people, but I would hate for someone's podcast to be turned into a legal battle because of that.
Well, that's a good question, and really a much deeper question that I probably legally can answer. But no, let's just take, for example, the WDTM, right? We based that off WKRP in Cincinnati. We didn't use their words. We sort of used their music, and I asked the guy who created it for me, I said, do I have any copyright issues? And he said, are you making money off of it? I said, no. He said, you don't have any you don't have any issues to worry about. But I totally agree with you. I also have friends that are artists. I wore a shirt last night, Blue Mother Tupelo. And for to use one of their songs, I think I would need to get permission to use one of their songs just flat out, right? Use one of their songs. Even if I'm not making money, I still think you have to get permission from the artist. And
you have to give credit. I mean, you've seen that happen now on TikTok and Instagram as people show videos, they give credit to whoever the song person is. But I just want to make sure I kind of threw that out there because, again, I grew up in the age where that wasn't a big deal. And I think until you if you don't work in the legal field, you're just like, whatever, it's a song. It's not gonna.
But, and that's all the more reason.
The financial portion of it.
Yeah, that's all more reason to use your own or to get one that's already, free public domain.
Right. You do have to give them credit, but if you use it consistently, you will actually have to, there is something legal that you have to do. I used to run an open mic coffee house and, people would get up during an open mic and sing, one of the top radio songs. And we either were not allowed to put it publicly or we had to get an overall certificate, so say, that covered any cover songs.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Dean, I saw Barbara's hand first.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on that. Someone put in the chat Creative Commons, so you can look up Creative Commons music. You can also put the word free Creative Commons music. And those are artists that release their music and it's little tidbits that you can use, snippets that you can add. And you don't have to give that. Some, you have to read the license. Some they want attribution, some don't want attribution, but there are ways to add music like that.
Okay, that's good. Now, this is a huge legal question. I understand that. Dean, did you have something too?
I was just going to say that I know a lot of podcasts that don't even use bumper music, so I wouldn't make a big deal out of it, of that being a big issue.
Okay. There again, it's like I said at the beginning, this is your
Right.
breakfast you're making. Make it the way you want to. All right, let's move on. Whoops, there we go. So this is the structure that we used, and back to Candace's point, this is sort of like a speech, right? We have an opening, we have a topic, maybe two, we summarize, then we close the remarks, or you have your closing remarks. That's, here again, this is the way we did it. This is a great generic way to, to put your structure together. You introduced what you're going to talk about. And this is, you notice this is a Toastmaster speech. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them, right? Same thing with a podcast. Give it some kind of introduction. If you got a guest, tell who's there, why they're there, what's the relevance of being there. Get into it, do that. Maybe it's one or two. But at the end of the day, what's your takeaways? If you cover so much information and you want them to take away 4 or 5 things, back it off. If I listen to a podcast, I'm looking for 1, maybe 2 takeaways, right? And that's really what you want to focus on. Discuss all you want to, but focus on getting those 1 or 2 takeaways. Summarize it. Here's what we told you. We're closing out. Be sure to follow us. You've heard all those legal descriptions to get people to continue to listen to your content, right? And that's just a sample. There again, do not have to use this, but if you're starting it out, this is something you might want to use as your structure. Okay. Okay, tools for a podcast. Going with audio, like we said, first of all, you have to have a microphone. I went and bought, when COVID hit, I'm going to try to show this to you without tearing something up. I bought this microphone. I absolutely love this microphone. You can buy it on Amazon. I think it was $30, $35. It has been a great microphone for me. I actually bought one for work. It sits over on my work computer as well. You have to have a good microphone. You don't have to have, there are microphones that cost thousands of dollars. You don't have to get $1,000 microphone, but don't use the little cheap one built into your laptop either, right? You want something a little bit of quality, because people are going to listen to this. You think about it. People are going to listen to it on their computer, which sometimes has good audio quality. They're going to listen to it in their vehicle if they listen to it from their phone, or they may just play it directly off their phone itself, right? You don't know how people are going to listen to it, but you want to give a good quality audio as you can. Now, here's the other part of that. Spend as much as you want. If you want to create a really good one, you get one of those that mounts to a table and where it doesn't sit on the table, because I could bump this and you could probably hear it, right? You could spend as much as you want on the microphone. A recording device. I bought me a little cheap, I actually do a video podcast. I guess I can say that now. A video podcast as well at blackberrywisdom.com. I've been doing this weekly, and I bought me a cheap camera. I've got it off camera over here. I bought me a cheap camera that records to a SD card, right? I use it for that. For recording podcasts, I just use my laptop, but I have an external hard drive. I found out quickly that I ate up my hard drive space, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to buy a completely new computer. No, go buy you a fairly inexpensive external hard drive to store all this content on. It will be worth its weight, trust me. And then you have to have some recording and editing software. Come on, Dean.
Just going to tell you to pick a solid state hard drive.
Yes. What solid state? You mean what, Dean? For those,
meaning it doesn't have moving, running motor parts,
right?
because they are noisy. Plus, they also break down much more frequently, and they're faster usually, which means that as far as recording that, in my experience, if you can record directly to your drive and edit through your drive, it saves a lot of space also, and you run into a lot of problems with the limitations on your system. So
yes.
You mean
Thank you.
digital?
Digital,
Well,
yes.
Yeah, so my external hard drive is disconnected by USB to my computer, and I'm doing just exactly as Dean said. when I record, the default drive is that external hard drive instead of my computer, because good night, I've already eaten that thing up. And you get a lot more hard drive space on external than you can on a computer as well.
I was gonna ask, what's the name of the microphone that you got off of Amazon?
It's called, I don't know how, probably not pronounce it right. Fifine, Fifine. Fifine. Does that look right? Put it right there. What I like about the microphone is it's got a built-in receiver audio adjustment, so I can turn it down or up. And I've listened to myself enough to know that I've got it just about right for what I'm doing. Right? If I'm in a low environment situation, or if I step way far away, I could turn it up, which you can't do that, with most microphones. So it's really good one. I like it. Okay, your recording options. We're using one of those right now, and Bert is doing it for me. He is recording. When I do my audio recordings, I record on Zoom. So Curtis and I actually got together. We do it one night a week. We record 2 episodes each time we got together. We could look at each other, and I could tell him, go a little faster or stop, or he could see my expressions just as if we were sitting together or across from each other, talking on a podcast. You think about radio DJs, they sit across from each other talking, and one of them can see, oh, I forgot my notes. They can see that, hey, I need to fill in while the other one is messing up, or, whatever. The interaction that you have when you're in person that you don't have when you're on Zoom, right? I mean, if you were just doing audio, but Zoom gives you the opportunity to see what the other person's doing. And boy, I'm using a lot of my hands, aren't I? Put them down, John. Okay. So I use Zoom, and what you see here is Zoom. Here's the Taylor Duncan interview we did. It creates the MP4 file, which is the video and an audio file. It's already there. It's already broke out for you by Zoom. Don't know if you know that or not. So if you go to there's my F drive, which is my external. I've got a Zoom directory, and I call that the Taylor Duncan interview. Already there. Boom. I've got it ready. Then, actually, let me say this also. The other podcast that I did, we used Audacity. Now, Zoom is free, right, with certain limitations, but Audacity is another free application. It's a great application and really very robust for being free. With Audacity, you can record on different channels. You can edit. You can increase or decrease your volume. There's so many things you can do with Audacity. So if you want to do a complete audio, I would suggest either Zoom or Audacity. Here again, there's probably better options out there. Anybody know of any other better, or not better, but just other options?
Hey, John, I put in the chat a couple other GarageBand, Logic Pro.
Yeah. GarageBand's free if you've got a Mac, right?
Yes.
Yep. So there's different options out there. I just know, and that's a great point, actually, McDean. I'm working on a Windows workstation now. Wish I had my Mac. I got away from Mac. Bad decision. I'm just saying. So Zoom and Audacity are the two that really are best options for me on a PC. Mac does have the a lot better options, I think. If anybody else had any other options, throw them into chat as well. We'd love to see those. Now, I did buy something, and I do both video and audio with this software. It's called Wondershare Filmora. I'm not sure who the overarching owner, I think it's Adobe, but it's not very expensive. I think it may be $100 a year, maybe something in that neighborhood. But man, the ability of what you can do with this software is wonderful. So what I do is I drop in, this is just to give you a short overview. You have media, you have audio, you can add titles, transitions, effects, all these things you could do. And I've selected the media, and all I do is take that file, remember that MP3 file that I got from Zoom, drop it into this little segment right here. And that would be like this file here. This is that MP3 file. Then I've got a WDTM radio opening and closing little snippet. So if you ever listen to our podcast, listen all the way through, the opening jingle is slightly different than the closing. So there's two different audio files. I use that, and I just click them and drag them down to this bar down here. And what you see is here's the little segment of the opening, and here's the actual file, and I can go through and edit. Let me just be totally blunt here. When you're podcasting with Curtis, there's a lot of editing involved. Okay, a lot of editing. So even with me,
No.
Yeah, true. It's true, Catherine. So you can edit, if you say booger, you can't say booger, right? Oh, I got to edit that out. We told some bad jokes, take those out. There were some times of blank, that we didn't say anything, like this is awkward. Let's just trim that down to where you get exactly the way you want it. And when you're finished, all you do is save it. And it saves it as some kind of a Wondershare Filmora file, but then you can edit it or export it. There's the export button. You can export to MP3, you can export to YouTube if it's video, all that you can do right through this application right here. All right, does anybody use anything different? And there again, this is a PC software. Does anybody use a Mac or any other software that you think?
John?
Yeah.
John? Hi. I use DaVinci Resolve because it's cross-platform, and you don't even have to get the professional version, and it just does about everything the professional version does.
DaVinci
Resolve, yeah.
DaVinci Resolve. Drop that in the chat if you don't care too, because I'm going to save the chat when we get finished, Bert.
Sure.
If I'll remember. Somebody help me remember too, and then capture those things, and I'll try to share them later. All right, so there's options out there. I really, really, really love this one. It's worked out great for me, and I'm sure there's others out there. And back to the music part of it, the audio actually has some built-in music that you can use for free. On my own podcast that I do, I use their little jingle that they've got. I say, what the hey, I'm not reinventing the wheel. Let's just use something that's already working. And it works great for me. Okay, you've got your content, you've got done all the editing, you've got it in this nice little file. Man, you're so proud. It's like a new child. You've done all this work and you've got it together. Now, what do you do with it? I've got it on my hard drive. You can't listen to it on my hard drive unless you come to my house. So how am I going to get it out for the world to hear it? Well, here's where the road widens, very much so. There are many ways to get your file into a podcast directory. So when I created that file, it's sitting on my hard drive right over here. But I've got to get it onto a directory where I can share it to others. I can't share it directly from my hard drive. That's breaking some internet rules. I don't know what it is, but you're breaking some internet rules by doing that, right? So I've listed some here that you could use. These are services: Libsyn, Buzzsprout, Captivate. You probably never heard of these. Podbean. I love that name right there. I use Libsyn, and I'm going to show you how it works on the Libsyn. I think it's $5 a month to be able to load, and I'm not sure what my limitation is. I'm not met it yet, but there's some limitations, obviously, because you're using their hard drive space, right? I'm using their hard drive space. How much do I get to store on there? I've not met it yet, and I think it's $5 a month for Libsyn. So here's what Libsyn looks like. Here's their interface, really clean, nice and clean. I've got all the episodes that we did with WDTM Radio. They're all published, the date that I published them. And if I go down to the next screen, this is what it looks like. I took my file, I uploaded it to Libsyn, and Libsyn then gave me 4 different ways that I can share that file to other people. So you can go and directly download the episode, the file, the audio file with this link. This link here, the permalink, this is, if you go to wdtmradio.com, this is the link that when you click on it, that's where it goes to. It goes to this link here. If you want to embed it in your website, this is the enclosure tag. I don't know how to do that. That's beyond me. I'm not a programmer. I am a very early stage learning in this situation, right? And then lastly is directory. If you want to go to this directory, you'll find it in all the episodes. So this is the things that I use to share to our website. And also have a little, some statistics that they share with us. So over the past 3 months, we started this, looks like we started it in February. I can't remember. I know it was in March. We've had 194 unique listeners, 93, what's this month, and 18 this week. 18 people have listened to it. So we can know, is anybody listening besides me and my wife? Okay. Yeah, there's a few more people listening. So that's what I get from Libsyn. Okay. What do they do with it? They give me the link, and then they also publish it out to certain different services like Apple, Spotify, Google Podcast, different ones. They promote it on those platforms. I don't have to go to those platforms and do it. Libsyn does it for me. That gets you that. Now I'm getting out past my hard drive, past Libsyn. They're going to share it out to different services. And to me, and it's the most downloaded podcast service, is Apple Podcast. You have to have your own Apple account, create an account just for the podcast, or you don't create an account, but you have to create a cert connection for your podcast. You actually have to publish it. At least there's a certain amount of time where it has to be published. And then Apple goes through and approves your podcast. I don't know what the heck they do to it, but they do some kind of approval. And then you can publish on Apple Podcast. I tell you to say this, there is a process. It is not quick click and you're up on Apple. No, it's I want to say it's a week or better. It's like, I guess it's like purchasing a gun. You have to have a cooling off period before you can buy a gun, right? You have to have a cooling off period before you can publish on Apple, because they don't want you just out there spouting off anything. I guess, I don't know, but just know that you got to have just a little extra step to get purchased or get published to Apple. And then once you do, boom, you're in there. Here we are, WDTM Radio. Couldn't be more proud that we are absolutely on Apple, because that's what I listen to. I listen to Apple Podcasts. And here's the episodes. You see, it's got just a little bit of information that I put in Libsyn that it includes there. If you want to add more, you can add documentation, links, all this different stuff. Okay, so I've got it all there. And lastly, where am I going to put it? How am I going to get it out to the world? If I've got it on Apple Podcast, how do you know it? How do you know that I've got a podcast on there? Well, you don't. And this is the part I'm still struggling with. How do you get that information out? I told my wife, I've told my mom and dad, who do not listen to podcasts, so they don't really care, right? I share it with a few friends, but I've got to get the information out there. Well, you can put it on your website. You can send it to email, or you can send it through social media. You have to do something to get it out there. All that work I've done, but if nobody ever listens to it, it's for naught, right? Except for checkbox on your level 4 elective in pathways. I've got to get it out there. So on the website, let's see, do I have another slide? Yeah. On the website, I create a blog to where I give just a little bit of information. And then I had a link that you can go click. If you click on this, that takes you to that Libsyn link I told you about. It goes directly to that and plays the podcast. So this was another step. This was more visual, right? In the fact that I've got text, I've got some kind of something to introduce it. I could have pictures. I've got the picture of our logo there. You can do anything on the blog, but the core of it is I want you to go listen to the podcast. So I put a little bit of information, but most of the information is in the audio part in the podcast, and that's where I was trying to drive you to. Makes sense. Oh, that was it. All right. With that said,
John?
yes.
Hey, this is Donna.
Hey,
I
Donna.
didn't get in because I didn't find the join button, so I missed the first like 20 minutes or more. But I have a tip. I don't know, you may have already talked about this. I listened to, I forgot his name. It was about a year and a half ago, a gentleman who was given a talk, who's made millions off of podcasts. He was given a talk for NSA, National Speakers Association. And some of the tips he gave us was, if you really want to make millions at podcasting, you need to, the algorithm is 8 to 10 minutes. So keep your podcast between 8 and 10 minutes. And what he says that he recommends doing is spending like a weekend and doing 30 podcasts. So you'll like every 5 podcasts change clothes, and then do 5, and then change clothes 5 more, and then it'll look like you're doing it for the week. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you'll have a month's worth of podcast. You put them out there and you schedule them to hit every single day. And with the 8 to 10 minute algorithm, then after 3 months, that's the magical period where people will start catching on, and you will go wildfire. It will like multiply 100 times over after the 3rd month period. He doesn't know why it takes 3 months, but it does. So if you want to get popular, you want to promote your business, do these steps, because he's a millionaire and he knows what he's talking about. And I'll have to find his name later, go look through my papers. And then the other tips he gave was, you've got to pick, for the title of your podcast, you have to pick a word that is in the search engine, that so go to the search engines for podcasts and see what the ones that come up the most are in your field of expertise. Find that word, that keyword. Like if you're looking for something, see what the keyword is, and then you use that keyword in your podcast. It's very important to learn how to title your podcast, where the search engine will pick you up. And you know what? I'll just go back through my notes and give them to somebody I'll give them to you, John, and then you can, distribute to people. So
Yeah, I love that.
I'll go back through my notes, and then we can all be millionaires. Yay, I'm for that. I haven't been brave enough to do the podcast. So, I think I need some one-on-one training, John.
Well, actually, Donna, you bring up a great point. When Curtis and I first started the one for WDTM Radio, our goal was to make a 12 to 15 minute podcast, because we thought our audience would be somebody who would put it on their phone and listen to it on the drive, either to work or to go shopping. And if you listen to it any more than 10 to 12 minutes or 12 to 15 minutes, we thought it'd be too long. Now, we didn't stay within that guideline always, but that's a great part. If you do a 3 or 4 minute, that's a real small snippet. People will consume that and move on to the next. In today's world, they want this information quick. I listen to some podcasts and it takes them 4 or 5 minutes to get, here's what I've been doing. Such a beautiful day. And then finally they get into their content. I'm like, you're killing me. I don't want all your background. I just want the content, right? And then there's some people who have like an hour's worth podcast. Man, I don't have an hour to listen to your podcast. I'm sorry. Even if it's something I really want to listen to, I'm going to fast forward through to the part I want to hear if I can. So that's a great point, Donna. Great point.
He said 8 to 10 minutes. You don't want less than 8, and then you don't want more than 10. That is the time frame for the algorithm to pick up and to get you in the running, is the 8 to 10 minute. Yep.
Awesome.
That's and he hires people, because he's a millionaire, he can afford it. He hires people to edit all his videos. So
there you go.
Yep. So when you get, when you're making so much money, you delegate out those things and not do them yourself. When you're making a lot of money, the things that you're not an expertise at, you hire somebody to do for you.
That's it. You come up with the content, let someone else do the behind the scenes magic, right?
Yep.
That's great. Anybody else have any comments, questions? Are you challenged? Do you think, hey, I just can't do this, John? This is too hard. It's not. It's not. Nobody?
Thank you, John. I just want to say this is awesome again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Donna, maybe you and I should do a podcast together.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Connie, I would love to. I've got a lot of ideas and we can bounce off of each other. I would love it. Love it, love it, love it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yes.
And I'll
Let's
tell you,
motivate
how do you get the word out? How to get the word out there? Share it with your Toastmasters friends. Even if you all are going to talk about gardening, right? You got a gardening podcast, which has nothing to do with Toastmasters, but since you are Toastmasters, at least you've got an audience to send it out to, right? Awesome. Yes.
Thank you.
Am I willing to
John.
share my deck? Yes, I will share my deck. I will put if you go to the wdtmradio.com downloads page, I'll be putting all these things that people have been sharing. I'll put that there so you can get all those at your leisure.
Thank you.
Maybe this weekend, maybe Monday before I get to it. I'll be honest.
Thank you.
All right. Yes. Now I don't see it. It looks like we're closing out. So thank you all. We'll go back to the main room